Okay, guys, welcome to my channel, The Jordan. On this channel, this is basically an introduction. I just want to let you know what you can expect, what the Jordan, the title means, what we're talking about. So, what we can expect on this channel is to talk about things like history. I'm not going to leave it at history, only history. We're going to tell stories. The main thing I want to do in this channel that will highlight periodically is, have you ever heard and this is relevant to the title, the Jordan. Have you ever heard the scriptures where it talks about if you have a Bible or you read it, which is fine, whatever, enter into the rest of God, enter into that rest. But it also says we have entered into the rest, and we go, which is it? Enter into the rest, let go and let God, or da-da-da. Let me give you a little bit of a story about how I started off with God. And if I tear up, forgive me. I don't feel like I'm going to tear up, but if I do, forgive me. I was sleeping and I was in a relationship that I just felt it was just not great. And I finally went into a stage when I was sleeping of this absolute peace. It was, to describe it, I can't describe it, but it was like, if I had to describe it, it'd be like, sit after you just take a shower and you grabbed a blanket, let's say, and it's springtime. Oh boy, here they come. Here the tears come. You just took a shower, it's springtime, and you're laying on the grass and you've got a blanket and you brought, let's say, some wine and some cheese or whatever you're bringing, and you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, rest. And as I'm dreaming, I'm walking through this parking lot of a church of all places. Now, I was a hellion. I was a hellion. And I hear this singing and this old lady in the guitar trying not to cry because that was my grandmother. And I'm like, holy crap, what's my grandmother doing here at this church parking lot? And this voice came through her and it said, let go, rest, let go. Gonna get to the Jordan here in a minute. Let go. And I was like, I'm resting. I just feel this rest, but how do I let go? See, the clue was already baked in. I'm resting. How do I let go? So what God was telling me, because He told me, I said, Lord, I want to let go. I don't know how. I want to let go. I don't know how. And again, it wasn't even like He was entertaining this at all. It was let go. And I'm like, well, let's get back to the first point, God. I want to let go, but I don't know how. And then by the third time He said it, He said, let go. And I said, okay. I said, okay. Like, this is what I got. Okay. And then He said, you know how. You know how. See, God is our rest, and God already is. What does the Jordan represent? The Jordan represents, okay, let me give you a backdrop to this. It's a river, okay? It's a river in the Levant, modern day Israel. Let me give you a backdrop. The guy that's going to go through this river with what's called the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? You got Jacob, Jacob's 12 sons, and Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. So let's start with Abraham and we'll walk it through. And then we'll get to the Jordan and this thing called rest. All right. Here we go. God says to Abraham, Abraham is he's a monotheist, but he's a monotheist in part, I believe, because he's a Zoroastrian, but I think he's going in and out of monotheism because it describes him as an elder at the gate. Now, if you understand the area where that is being said, you'll understand he's part of what's called a magi, a magician, a sorcerer. Well, here's the thing. When we look, where do we see that word magi again? Christ. when Christ is born. Who comes to visit him? The three magi. No, it wasn't three, possibly more, 50. These 50 magicians come from the east and they follow this star to anoint this Messiah. Okay? Let's get back to Abraham. Let's not get caught up in the weeds. Abraham is like, okay, I'm here. I'm a Zoroastrian. I think he's coming out of this magical practice. And somewhere along the line, God comes to Abraham and says, get up from this place. What's this place? All right, I'm going to use my hands here. We have Anatolia. Okay, first of all, we have the Mediterranean right here, right? This is the graphics I'm doing right now. We'll get better. We have the Mediterranean right here. The Mediterranean, somewhere up in here is Italy, and we got Greece and all that. Now, Israel is that bit of land right here, and we have Egypt right here. Now, let's go this way. This area is modern-day Iraq. This is Israel, modern-day Iraq. All right, here we go. Abraham is from Ur. He's a Chaldean. And he's from one of the sons of Noah named Shem. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You get the Japhetic, you get the Hamitic, and you get the Shemites. Semites. You've heard of the term anti-Semitism, anti-Shemitism. All right, I think I'm saying that right. This is where Abraham's from. We'll get into where these people went and who they became later, but let's tell a fun story here. So Abraham is down here in a place called Ur of the Chaldees. And, well, it's in the area of Ur. And God comes to him and says, get you out of this place and go that way. Go that way, Abraham. I'm going to give you a place of rest. Excuse me. I'm going to give you a place of rest. I'm going to take you to a place that we're going to call home, where your people, because I believe the reason is because Abraham's struggling with this. I believe it is struggling with this Zoroastrianism and this monotheism, one God, and this polytheism, many gods, because these people believed in many gods. But Abraham's starting to come to this place like God is one. How can he be separate? How does a creator that created everything divide himself? Unless those gods, if you got to remember, the gods represented different things: farming, getting married, fertility, all these things. So they're okay. Let's keep it simple. So he gets up and goes. He goes to this place called the Levant. It's in Israel. And he has children, this, that, and the other. And one of the children's name was Jacob. Now, Jacob was one day, and these guys are monotheists, right? So Jacob one day is in the wilderness. He's wrestling this being, okay? He's wrestling this being called God. Now, I think it's an allegory. It's possible that he's in an inner turmoil, but whatever it is, it's enough to do damage to his hip because he would not stop. And I think that there's a key there. He was like, I've got to know who you are. My grandfather, he's coming to know you. So in our own minds, we're like, oh, this guy's the great, but who am I? I know who you are, God. All right. So he eventually, something happens to his hip where God touches his hip and it causes him to just, okay, all right, whatever. Okay, I'll trust you. Now, Jacob has 12 sons. And we're going to tell the story here. One of those sons, Joseph, his prized son, he loved Joseph. Okay, his Egyptian name is possibly User-Seth. Okay, and that's going to come in handy in a minute. So User-Seth has received a coat of many colors. What was these many colors representing? It was the coat of many nations, of many peoples. What God would do, he would clothe Joseph. Joseph was a representation or a picture of who? Christ. God would clothe Christ. He would clothe the father, Jacob, would clothe the son with the world. All right, we'll get to that in a minute. So Joseph is out with his brothers one day, and his brothers are like, you know what? We don't like this guy. God has given him, or our father has given him the blessing. To have the blessing was a very big deal. There's stories about the blessing where the father blesses the son, so he's allowed to prosper his family, this, that, and the other. We don't. Where's our promise? Where's our blessing from our father? So they throw him in a well. Okay, here you go. Here you go, buddy, thrown in a well. Now, Joseph had a dream the night prior, a couple of nights prior, that the 12 stars, and the moon and the sun would bow down before him. Now he's like, he asks his father, what does this mean? His father kind of is like, oof. And we'll find out what that means later. So Joseph is being thrown into a well, oh boy, and this caravan that was on its way to Egypt. You see, at the time, there was a famine in the land. It started with Abraham, and it ends later through Joseph's life. And the way famines worked and droughts worked back then, they could last hundreds of years, and they ebbed and flowed. Sometimes you'd have a little bit of a rainy season, then it would get dry. Okay. So there's a bargain made. They find Joseph. There's a bargain made with these 12 guys, or these 11 guys now. Actually, it's 10 guys because Benjamin is really, really small. There's another son. He's really, really small, and he's at the house with Jacob. They start bargaining, and they say, listen, what are you going to do with this? You can't take it back to your father. You've thrown him in a well, all this stuff because you're going to get caught. And the sons lied and said a wolf got him. The pack of wolves got this guy. So the father was well grieved. So what are you going to do? And they said, we'll sell him to you. Just keep it on the hush. We'll sell him to you, guy. You keep on your way. Give us the money. Now, what was Jesus sold for? Under Judas, if you know the story. He was sold for what? 30 pieces of silver. All right. Now, these guys are on their way to I hope I don't get emotional. Farts. That might happen in this channel, so bear with me. So they're on their way to Egypt. Here we go. There's a slave quarters inside of Egypt, and outside of that slave quarters is the marketplace to sell slaves. So these guys sell Joseph. And they sell him to who? Potiphar. Potiphar, the governor of Egypt. Excuse me. Oh, unprofessional. The hell with it, They sell him. And he grows up in Potiphar's palace. Okay? Now, Potiphar is just under a pharaoh named Amenhotep III. Amen-hotep. Aman is a god, okay? He's one of the gods of Egypt. Aman was Amenhotep, the pharaoh's name. What that means is Aman is represented. Aman is seen. Is seen through who? The God-man. This is how they did things back then. The pharaohs would become the vicars of the gods. They become the representation of the gods. This comes in handy later. We're going to get to the wall here. This might not be a short, so we're just going to go with it. All right. So in this, Joseph is sold as a slave. And I believe it's then that his name is changed to Usersif. He goes from being an Israel or a Hebrew to an Egyptian. Grows up, learns all the things of the palace, everything that you can learn, all the bells and whistles, from politics, all this stuff. Now, he gets into trouble, which was no fault of his own. He gets thrown in prison for about 10 years, and he has a dream in prison. And this poor guy, has a dream in prison. And that dream is what? He sees this vision of, I'm going to sum it up, plenty and then famine. 7 years of plenty and then famine. It had to deal with cows and all this stuff. Not what I'm trying to highlight right now. So in this vision, there's going to be plenty, and then it's going to turn into famine. And then he tells the drought. Then he tells, he gets out of prison in this way because he's now going to present this to the Pharaoh. Amenhotep the fourth at this time. Amenhotep the third had died. This is well later. Amenhotep the third died. Amenhotep the fourth. That's going to be important too. Hey guy, here's a dream. This is what happened. What? And the Pharaoh's like, well, in this case, what should we do? We are going to store the grain. This was a tradition, obviously, that they did. This was a thing that they did. This is where accounting comes from and all that, storing grain. We're going to store the grain, and then for 7 years, and that way we'll have plenty left over. That's going to come in handy later. For more than just the obvious reasons. All right. So that's what happened. So Pharaoh, okay, here we go. Give me a minute here. This is what happened, and inevitably the Pharaoh becomes a guy named Akhenaten. He changes his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten. What does Akhenaten mean? The unified one be praised. But it has nothing to do with a representation on earth. He doesn't say, well, he's praised through me. He says only God. Akhenaten. Akhenhotin. Only God is praised because he recognizes this man, this beautiful man that has had these visions, and God is with him. And Egypt becomes very successful in the 7 years, and is also able to float the next. Well, why does that matter? Because Jacob, my son, he's at the house, my son. He's been weeping over Jacob over Joseph for a very long time. We're going to go over this story in another video because there's some importance to that. But so Joseph, his brothers, Jacob calls his 10 sons to go to Egypt because we're going into the famine years, the drought years. This is after the 7, starting to go into the drought. Get some grain. They go. Long story short, Joseph sees them and recognizes them. They don't recognize Joseph. Why? He's a freaking prince. Now, long story short, there's a lot that happens in this story, but we're trying to fast forward a little bit. So, long story short, they start recognizing it's Jacob, blah, 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 and the father and the mother is gathered to Egypt after going back and forth this grain thing. And now Joseph has the position to be able to send them to the land of Goshen. It's in the Nile Delta. Okay, it's this North Egypt. So his family's there, and they start to grow. Well, this is a little, I don't want to call it a caveat. No, it's not. Okay, this is a little bit right here. Why is it important? Because here, they're able to flourish because in actuality, the people that are in North Egypt at this time are called shepherd kings. That's interesting. These are people from the Levant, well prior, during Abraham's time, that were traveling back and forth due to this drought. And they inevitably settled there, so they were Semitic. Okay? Now, what are you saying? I mean, they're Egyptians. Yes, they're Egyptians. However, in the first dynasty, what I'm talking about is the 18th dynasty. In the first dynasty, all these Egyptians were Hamitic. They were from the line of Ham. Remember? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All this is going to make sense in a minute. They're Hamitic. So, what does that mean? That means that God is providing, because what's there now are Semites. In the north area, they're Semites. God is providing. He's allowing them to flourish. He's providing. That's where we're getting with this. So, in this provision, they're allowed to flourish. And years later, a guy named Moses shows up, and there's a whole thing where he's adopted because now people from the south, this is after Joseph's time, it's hundreds of years later, start to invade the north, and they get these shepherd kings out of there. And Moses is found in the river, and he's adopted as a prince. He becomes an adopted prince. But Moses is a Hebrew, not Egyptian. Now, this was kept from the Pharaoh. All right. Now it makes sense in the story why Moses, when he sees one of his brothers, he starts to discover he's a Hebrew, slain by a soldier. He escapes into the wilderness. This whole thing happens. God shows up and says, "Go back to Egypt." Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm going to do that. Go back to Egypt, set my people free. Okay? Go set them free. Now we're getting into the important part. They go across, and they're a series of plagues and all this stuff happens to Egypt, and they're running from the Pharaoh. Well, actually, he's saying, "Go, get out of here." They go. Pharaoh changes his mind, gathers his army, and they start. And this is days. This is days. So they're starting to get their army, starting to go after these guys. And Moses comes up across this thing called the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea. Well, we know the story. He hits the staff, it splits, he goes across. Well, when the Pharaoh tries and his army tries to go through it, it collapses on them. Okay. We find chariots today at the bottom of this Red Sea. It collapses on them. So fast forward, they're trying to get into the land of Israel, the place, what we called rest. We talked about the rest of God. God wants you to rest. We're trying to get into that place of rest. What ends up happening? They disobey. They don't go in. And they end up wandering around the wilderness for 40 years. Now, what's neat about that? Because God provided for them anyway. How's that? Because the place that they were wandering, here's the Mediterranean, here's the Levant, here's Egypt. The place that they were wandering was right here. This is Israel. They were wandering right here. Now, if Pharaoh had not died with his army, and obviously the kingdom of Egypt is still going because it's replaced and all that, but if Pharaoh had not died with his army, they would not have been able to wander even. So even in their rebellion, God provided for them because he understands, "Lord, I want to, but I don't know how." That's not a gigantic act of rebellion. What they did was rebellion, straight up, amongst many other things. I want to, but I don't know how. I'm going to provide anyway. Now we're starting to go into the Jordan. So Moses, wandering with these guys, that generation dies, and Moses dies with them, and Joshua is now a representative of Israel. And he's prior asked to go into the land of the Levant, or of Israel. And they come across this Jordan. And God commands Joshua, take from one of the 12 and follow the priest. I think it was like, I can't remember how many cubits back it was. The priests are going to go, when they step into the waters are going to assuage. They're actually going to be held up. Okay, this was a gigantic thing because you got to remember the river back then was not affected by farming north, so there was more volume of water. So this being held was almost, God has a weird thing about rivers and seas. They represent something. It represents baptism, because that same place Jesus was baptized, and John the Baptist was baptizing. John the Baptist baptized Jesus. So it represents, dying to the old and coming into the new. So what's Joshua doing? He's about to die to the old and come into the new, the place of rest. Now, what was being represented by the waters being held off? Just that. "Lord, I want to, but I don't know how." And so we hear so many times, don't we? If you think it, it'll happen. Beware of your thoughts. Of course, we don't want to just have, entertain things. Sometimes we do, and we don't mean it, and we're sincere. So, according to this thing of don't think anything, or you're going to screw it, you are your thoughts and all this crap, because it is crap. And on some level, there's some wisdom, but taken too far, it's crap. What is God saying to these people? saying, I know it's not going to be perfect. I mean, you wandered around, but you were intentionally saying no prior. Now it's like, okay, we're going to go forward. We just trust you. I want to, but I don't know how. It's the same thing that the centurion said to Jesus, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. There wasn't an absolute rebellion. So what's God going to do? He's going to hold back the waters. He's going to hold back those things that would cause you not to believe, and he's going to protect you. You will be able to abide under the shadow of the Almighty. You will find under his wings refuge. Now, I want to get to the part where we're already in his rest later, but we're just going to tell the simple story here. So this is the bit where the Jordan, that river is called the Jordan, and they pass through. That's why I've labeled my channel the Jordan, because we're going to pass through with history, fun stories, and we're not going to pass through in the sense of, oh my goodness, whatever. We're going to allow, you're not perfect, and God knows that. And he's going to provide everything, everything. So that's why we're labeling the channel Jordan. We're going to have fun with the history. It's going to be a fun time. Hope you enjoy. Thanks so much. Cheers.